Priest. Jack now joins us with the details.
Allie and Evan, a man testifies before the Pennsylvania grand jury investigating priest sex abuse, saying he's a victim and a survivor. That same man also says he's worried parts of that grand jury report will be hidden from you, the public. So he wanted to tell his story right here to you. I tracked down the now defrocked priest that he accuses of abusing him. We'll warn you, some of the things you're about to hear may be considered graphic.
These were people that were important to me in my own maybe messed up way, but they were not people that I consider taking advantage of.
That's Herbert Shank responding to allegations of child sex abuse while he was a priest. One person accusing him is this Pennsylvania native who is choosing to keep his face anonymous and wants to share his story.
This is not an easy story to tell.
He says the Roman Catholic Diocese of Harrisburg was a central part of his childhood, describing himself as very involved. He attended church regularly, had his baptism and confirmation there. He eventually attended St. Patrick's School in Carlisle through 8th grade during the 1980s. He achieved something his classmates looked forward to doing: become an altar boy.
You got to leave and do any sort of funerals that were there. You got a free break from school. So being an altar boy was kind of a cool thing.
At an altar boy retreat in a place outside of Carlisle, he says he met a priest within the Diocese of Harrisburg, Father Herbert Shank.
From there, it became a very tumultuous relationship. It became very unhealthy.
He says Shank took him to a hot springs, pools big enough for 2 or 3 people.
It was kind of an awkward situation where we were completely naked in this pool. And he was trying to grab me and grope me and pull me and just kind of like, what is going on? I thought this was, something new. Here I am, a very young 12-year-old boy with this older man who is not a family member in this weird situation. It was my first introduction to massages.
He says he went along with it because he was a preteen under the guidance of a clergy member.
I remember it was very awkward, and I was very kind of put off by, why is he grabbing me? What's going on? Why is he trying to fondle me?
From there, he says a very unhealthy relationship blossomed with Father Herbert Shank. He says he spent a lot of time in the rectory of St. Patrick Church in Carlisle with Shank.
There was alcohol pretty much involved every single time. There was situations where it became sort of a fetish, where it was any opportunity to get me out of my clothes and to be in a situation where he could touch me or grope me, or a lot of massage, a lot of foot massages. It turned into full body massages in the rectory at St. Patrick's there in Carlisle, where we would be watching movies, we would be listening to. He had a very extensive collection of records, opera records. We would find ourselves in situations where a foot massage turned into, hey, come into the bedroom, let's get your clothes off and my clothes off, which, looking back, it was a very awkward and weird situation.
He says the majority of his time spent in the bedroom with Shank involved both of them in their underwear with baby oil used during massages.
It became a lot of groping. It became a lot of, oh, I spilled the bottle of baby oil on you, and let me rub it on you, and let me, as I move my hand up your inner thigh and touch your genitals. That was very uncomfortable for me. I think I knew at the time this was kind of weird, but when you are being in a situation where a member of the clergy is doing this, you think that that's okay.
He says while his parents were going through difficult times, Shank was his parents' counselor. He believes that's when Shank made him what he calls an object of abuse.
It was like leading the fox into the hen house. Where I was very young, 12-year-old, sensitive boy, saw parents in distress and turmoil, and he took the opportunity to identify me and to prey on me.
He says the abuse at the hands of Shank would continue for a year and a half. He says the majority of their time was at the St. Patrick Rectory. He describes his relationship with Shank as quid pro quo, getting special treatment as part of the abuse.
Usually involved a lot of coercing. As a 12-year-old boy, drinking Sauterne, French Sauterne, in the rectory, and eating cheese and watching scary movies so we could cuddle on the couch was kind of different, right? It was kind of cool. It's kind of fun. Like, oh my gosh, I'm special. And that's definitely part of the predator mentality, that make them feel special, make them feel vulnerable.
He recalls a time at the rectory at St. Patrick when he was a little bit older than when the alleged abuse started. He claims Shank wanted to take pictures of him in what he called Superman briefs, Speedo-like underwear. He says Shank made him change into the underwear, taking pictures of him with a Polaroid camera as he did various poses.
He wouldn't allow me to change in the bathroom. He wanted me to change right in front of him. And then, not surprisingly enough, during my process of changing, the camera would accidentally go off. And he was taking pictures of me naked in front of a mirror in the bedroom, the place where he lived in the rectory.
According to our source, his presence in the rectory did not go unnoticed.
They had a housekeeper there. The expression from the housekeeper as I'm walking, half clothed through the rectory at St. Patrick's, and her expression on her face makes a lot more sense to me now than it did then. Kind of like, what are you doing here? Why are you up here? Why are you in the living quarters for these men?
He says he received similar expressions from a pastor at St. Patrick Church at the time.
Some of his expressions at times, as I'm getting foot massages and I'm walking around, with shorts on and a t-shirt and in the living quarters, I think some of his expressions now resonate now that he knew or suspected, like, this is not normal. This is something that should not be happening, but I didn't know any better, right? I'm a 12-year-old kid who's got a couple glasses of wine in me.
Our source says St. Patrick Church on Marsh Road in Carlisle was also a frequent spot due to a shower in the back of the church. He alleges he and Shank went on runs along back roads around the church.
He was always suggesting that we, shower there. There were times when we showered together that I would be taking a shower and he would just get in the shower. And again, as a 12, 13-year-old boy, it was very uncomfortable. It was very like, what is, like, and I would try to squirm and get away and just kind of, get out of the situation as fast as I could. And I think it was definitely, but it was still, this was cool, so I tolerated it.
But he says the abuse wasn't limited to St. Patrick churches. He says there were trips to other neighboring states, including New York and Delaware, at different hotels and locations. And he says he continued to tolerate the relationship with Shank, even as he says Shank was abruptly moved from St. Patrick in Carlisle. According to the website of St. Rita's Catholic Church in Blue Ridge Summit, Shank served as an administrator for 8 weeks in 1984. Assignment records at the Diocese of Harrisburg say Shank eventually ended up at St. Rose of Lima in York in 1985. Our source says his family spent an Easter Sunday there one year, at a time when he says he started feeling confused and conflicted about the relationship. He says his parents were with him, but had no knowledge of the alleged abuse.
They had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. They had no idea this is a person of the church. This is someone you're supposed to be able to trust. This is someone who is above all of this. This is someone who should not be concerned about them spending time with your daughter or your son. They were wrong.
That Easter at St. Rose of Lima, he claims he found a letter written by Shank to another boy while walking through the parish.
I read the first couple paragraphs of it. Was a very lengthy letter, and it stated that he understood why was not a homosexual. He understood why was not someone who he could have a relationship with. I started reading this and I had flashbacks for kind of what happened with me. I returned the letter to the envelope and I put it away, and we just continued the day and then left.
Our source says it wasn't until he started getting towards high school age when he realized it was not a healthy relationship.
This is something I need to end, that I need no more correspondence with Herbert Shank at all.
On Tuesday, July 24th, we went to Herbert Shank's current residence in Conewago Township, Adams County. Hi.
Howdy.
I was wondering, is Herbert Shank home?
It's me.
Mr. Shank, a source of ours, I'm with FOX43 News, a source of ours says that you sexually abused him while at the Roman Catholic Diocese of Harrisburg. Would you like to respond to any of these claims?
No, not right now, thank you. I don't know. I don't know what to say right now. I would have to be in touch with the diocese, etc. So,
Not right now.
No. I might later, but not now.
Is there any way of getting back a hold of you about this? He just says that there was some incidents of massaging, things of that nature at different locations while you were with Harrisburg. Is there anything you would like to say?
Not right now, no, thank you.
We reached out to the Catholic Diocese of Harrisburg on that same day regarding the allegations against Herbert Shank. We received the following statement. The Diocese of Harrisburg is aware of Herbert Shank's actions related to child sex abuse. This case was turned over to law enforcement. On behalf of the Diocese of Harrisburg, Bishop Gaynor is deeply sorry these horrible actions occurred, and our thoughts and prayers are with the survivors and their families. The Diocese of Harrisburg strongly encourages the reporting of all instances of abuse to the PA Child Abuse Hotline. On Tuesday, July 31st, we returned to Herbert Shank's home. I spoke with the diocese and they gave me a statement. I can show you what they gave me, and if you would like to respond at all. Would you have any comment regarding what they have to say?
I would go along with them. I'm deeply sorry for everything that happened. And that right now is all that I think I should say until I've talked to my lawyer and anybody else about what's involved. Honestly, that's all that they said. But in my situation, I didn't fight it. I acknowledged there were some situations and resigned and went to the Institute of Living in Connecticut and was in therapy for about 2 years and 4 months. And I wish well, I couldn't stay there in therapy, but I wish I had. I think I would have forgiven myself a little better and would have been able to maybe approach and say something to the people. But right now, that's all I would say. But the diocese, the thing with the thing that the grand jury is putting out, it makes it sound terrible across the board. And I'm sure certainly that there must have been those situations. They wouldn't bring them up. In my own, that was not. This is in 1994, 8 years before all that business happened with cardinal law and resignation in Boston. We're talking a quarter of a century ago. It was handled totally properly. Things were turned over. I was told that I had to get my own lawyer. The diocese had no connection with me on this level, at least on that level. And they asked if I would go for therapy, which I accepted. That's all I can say right now.
Do you know how many individuals you had this kind of a relationship with?
No, not off the top of my head. It certainly wasn't more than very few, but I don't want to, like I say, I don't want to go into that right now. I don't know. I really don't. I put the best face on it possible and didn't think it as being sexually molestation, like he mentioned, was massaging, and I thought, okay, fine, that's acceptable. But I like I say, right now, perhaps later when all this comes out, there might be a time when, I don't know.
Is there anything you'd like to say to any of these individuals who are coming forward?
Well, like I say now, I wish I had, even though I spent 2 years and 4 months in therapy, the last part of therapy was a little bit different than usual. The point being, I wish I had, when I came back here, I wish I had stayed in therapy, that I could come to the point where I might be able to face them. I am, obviously. These were people that were important to me in my own maybe messed up way. But they were not people that I consider taking advantage of.
We aired a small portion of this story last week. It aired right after the Diocese of Harrisburg released their list of people accused of abusing children going back for decades. Herbert Shank was on that list. Upon seeing our interview, the diocese released a statement in part saying, "We watched his recent interview with shock and great sadness as Shank attempted to rationalize clearly inappropriate behavior with children. We want to apologize to this particular survivor for the abuse he has suffered." The survivor in our story also released a statement to us in response to the diocese comments following our initial story and their release of the names of those accused of abuse. He said in part, Bishop Gaynor's comments last week and his reaction to Herbert Shank's interview FOX43 are an embarrassment to himself and the diocese. It is another failed attempt to show empathy. We have posted the full portions of both statements on our website, fox43.com. Jack Ebel, Fox 43 News.
All right.